What was up, chat? Today we're doing US-178, so go ahead and grab whatever you're using. I don't really know if you're in your car or something, but okay, yeah, this is getting awkward. Let's just get started game, alright? Just a reminder that you have 2 free requests per video, so yeah. US-178 is 240 miles long, and its majority is in South Carolina, but it's briefly in North Carolina before it ends in Rosman at US-64. Starting off strong here, we start off at US-64 just outside of Rosman. We get signed for it and Pickens, while US-64 goes to Brevard. And there's no sign on the other side, so yeah. Here we get our first reassurance shield as we enter the Rosman area. Here at this weird traffic light, we make a right turn. Here we get one of many straight arrow mileage signs. Trust me, you're going to see a lot of these on this route. Here in the mountains, we enter South Carolina, the Palmetto State, and we'll be heading en route to Pickens. Here we meet South Carolina 11, aka the Cherokee Scenic Byway or something like that. I actually don't know what it's actually called, but it's something like that. That's all I gotta say. Anyways, we are signed for Pickens, while South Carolina 11's unfortunately signed for Table Rock and Kiowee, Totsa Waste, and Salem. Salem's the only actual control city for South Carolina 11, sadly. They like to sign state parks here. Here we meet South Carolina 288, and it is signed for Pumpkin Town. Here we cross past the South Carolina 183 in downtown Pickens, and we'll also be on the way to Liberty. I couldn't find a sign. Here in Liberty we meet South Carolina 93 with no signs. Here we meet US-123, and it is signed for Greenville and Clemson, while we are signed for Anderson. Here we meet South Carolina 88, which is signed for Pendleton and Greenville. Here we meet I-85, which is signed for Greenville and Atlanta. Here we pass by one South Carolina 28 of Anderson. I say one of because there's 2 South Carolina 28 trucks for some reason. Why not just split in east-west for a very short time if you don't want to try to figure that stuff out? I don't know. But anyways, it is signed for Abbeville and Star, while we are signed for Anderson still. We're basically in Anderson. Just sign Greenwood and Belton, please. We passed by a little connector road for US-76 and South Carolina 28. This is like for the other direction for trucks and stuff to get through more easily, I guess. And we can see 2 I-85 shield and a US-178 shield, and it has an arrow issue as well. In Anderson, we joined US-76 and South Carolina 28. It, referring to US-76, has a weird arrow just because of the hospital sign, which I don't like. But, okay, I like the hospital sign, but the arrow for the hospital sign, like messing with US-76's like directional stuff, is a little annoying. And, yeah, that's the only thing that's really bothering me. But this is a personal picture here. Here we pass by East-West Parkway and Beltline Boulevard, and we get this weird sign here, square South Carolina shields. And this road, referring to East-West Parkway, will take you to South Carolina 81 while we keep straight ahead. Here we split off of South Carolina 28 for a little bit as we meet North Avenue. Here we run parallel to Main Street in downtown Anderson, and US-29 Business, which assigns us to Main Line for some reason, South Carolina 81, and South Carolina 28 join us for a little bit. Here we follow US-76 as we split from the other routes, and we will be heading toward wherever our next destination is. And also, I feel like this should be signed for Greenwood. Save Belton for later, honestly, because Greenwood's more like major and it's incorporated. Here we make a slight right turn after we reassurance shield. Then US-29 itself joins us at this light. Here US-29 will be splitting from us at a short concurrency here at this light. Here we meet South Carolina 252, which I did a video on recently, and it is signed for Honey and Path, while we were signed for Belton. Honestly, this is the lead way to Honey and Path, so this is right. And I feel like this should be signed for Greenwood too. It's a very major area for where it is. And yeah, I think I already said that stuff earlier. So let's just keep going. Here we have a super brief concurrency of South Carolina 20 and Belton, and it will head to Williamston and Pelzer. And I think the other direction is, let's see here. Sorry, a little delay. I don't care though. Due west and Abbeville, that's right. And I did not want to do any more takes, so I just did this in all one take, so bear with me. And here we can see that we're signed for Honey and Path, and also we see a little South Carolina Discovery Route shield, so that's cool. Here we reunite South Carolina 252 and concurrent very briefly, as we get signed for Greenwood, finally, and we're Shoals, so yeah. Here we split from US-76 and South Carolina 252, and we can still see the South Carolina Discovery Route sign with us here. And we are signed for Donalds, Erskine College, Due West, and Greenwood. Woo. And US-76 and South Carolina 252 are signed for Ware, Shoals, and Lawrence. Ah, that's a lot of signage, to say the least. But ironically enough, we get another straight mileage sign, but it's a one line for Greenwood, which I guess is still fun. Next, in Donalds, we meet South Carolina 184, and it is signed for Due West, Erskine College in Abbeville. And it's taking some of our signage away there. And we are signed for Hodges. Really? Put Greenwood there. That's more major. And Hodges is an unincorporated community. Holy crap. I always started, by the way. My bad. And the only junction you really have there is South Carolina 185, and that's it. But just no. Greenwood. That's all I gotta say. Greenwood. And here we meet South Carolina 420. 420. And it is signed for Ware, Shoals, and Shoals Junction, while we are signed for Greenwood. And this is a pretty unique sign here, to say the least. The sign must have gotten stolen a lot, as you... Oh yeah, it was definitely stolen a lot. Look in the background. Here in the town of Hodges, we meet South Carolina 185, and we get 2 US-25 signs as we make a left turn here. And then very, very shortly after we turn left, we get this sign for US-25, and it is signed for Greenville and Greenwood, and Greenwood's the way we're going. And also, this is the sign where my logo was made, so yeah, pretty weird, isn't it? Here we made a business route to South Carolina 72, which is signed for Clinton and Abbeville, and then we will turn left onto South Carolina 72, and we will also be signed for the 96 National Historic Site. Next, we get a knowledge sign for Clinton, Saluda, and Edgefield, which is good. Here we meet South Carolina 254, which is signed for Hotesbury and Greenwood, and it's referring to Uptown Greenwood. I don't know why it's signed like that, it's weird. Here we meet US 221, South Carolina 72 Business, as South Carolina 2 proper splits from us to go to Lawrence and Clinton, and US 221 will join us. Here at this random intersection of Marshall Road, we get signed for McCormick instead of Edgefield. I feel like US 25 should have priority here, honestly. It just makes more sense in my opinion. I don't really like this. I wish this would just be fixed. Here we meet South Carolina 34 in interchange, and it is signed for 96 in Greenwood. As we made our business routes, we split from US 221 as it heads to McCormick, and we will continue on to Saluda and Edgefield. Back with the personal pictures once again, we meet South Carolina, I don't even want to say a number, 67, and it goes to Callison. Here we split from US 25 as it heads to Edgefield, and we will get signed for Saluda still. Next, I have some fairly beautiful pictures of South Carolina 248, and it is signed for 96. And here at South Carolina 246, we get signed for Saluda and Columbia. That's a really good SC dot. And also, it's because South Carolina 246's termini are both in US-178. I didn't show the other, I want to show it the other direction, but yeah, this is really good. Here we enter Saluda and join South Carolina 39 and get signed for Columbia, which is good. Then we join South Carolina 121 and meet our invisible connector route. And then we get a mileage sign for Johnson and Augusta. And I don't like this mileage sign completely because it's just revolving around South Carolina 121. The only really good thing about it is Augusta, and that's it. I feel like there should be Control C for 178 here, and that should be Batesburg, Leesville. Here we meet US 378, which goes to McCormick and Columbia. Here we split from South Carolina 121, and we get signed for Rich Green and Batesburg, Leesville. It's not very often I see Control C's in numerical order by mileage, and also the fact that Batesburg, Leesville has its full name on a sign. So that's a little bit weird. And then we get one line for Batesburg, Leesville. Still pretty weird to see the whole text there. And also Rich Green's missing, but I guess that's okay. Here we split from South Carolina 39 as it heads to Rich Green. Here in Batesburg we join South Carolina 23, and the other direction of it is signed for Edgefield, while we are signed for Orangeburg and Columbia together. I wish I got the sign, but I missed it on the trip, so yeah, that's annoying. As we leave South Carolina 23, we join South Carolina 391. Next we meet US-1 during our concurrency of South Carolina 391, and we get signed for Orangeburg still, while US-1 is signed for Columbia and Aiken. Here we split from South Carolina 391 as we get signed for Wagner, and I hate when they put junction shields at the end of concurrencies. It just bothers me. Like, just put an arrow. We meet South Carolina 245 here, and we get a mileage sign for Pelion and Orangeburg, and apparently an indicator that we're in a place called Nice. I don't even know what this place is. Here we meet I-20, which is signed for Columbia and Augusta. Here we meet South Carolina 113, and also a side road that's signed for Pond Branch. Here we meet South Carolina 302, which is signed for Columbia and Wagoner, while we are signed for North now. And then we meet South Carolina 3, which is signed for Swansea and Barnwell, and I guess we're back to Orangeburg being signed. Here in the town of North, yes, the name is North, we meet US-321, and it is signed for Swansea and Nices, while we are still signed for Orangeburg. Here we meet the termini of South Carolina 692 and South Carolina 172, and they're both signed for St. Matthews. Here we meet a business route in Orangeburg, and holy cow, we get signed for Charleston. That's insane and really good. Good stuff, SU Dot. Here we join US-21, and we get a new line for Branchville. Here we meet US-601 and US-21 business, I think, here. And US-601 will bring you to I-26, as you can see by that giant shield. And apparently we were concurrent with a truck route of US-601. Here we meet South Carolina 33, which is just signed for Cameron. And we are signed for Bowman and Branchville now, and I don't like that. It should be Branchville and Charleston still, honestly. And anyways, South Carolina 33 took it to I-26, and back in the South Carolina 23 section, or junction, I kept saying 33, and I had to take like 8 takes on that. I thought I'd just say that. That really annoyed me. Here we meet US 301, which is only signed for Santee, and we are signed for Walterboro. And can we just make up our mind with the signage SU Dot? Please. And did I really just say SG Dot instead of SE Dot? As we meet both our business routes at intersections right beside each other, and South Carolina 4 silently, we split from US-21 and US-601 truck, and we see some insane signage. So, disregarding the business 178 signage because we'll probably get back to that in the other direction, but we see that southbound US-21 is signed for Roseville, Branchville, Walterboro, and Savannah. Holy cow, and Savannah's just insane, but I really like it, so I'm not complaining. Here in Bowman, we meet South Carolina 210, and we have a concurrency with it, but I'm skipping that. And we get signed for Harleyville and I-95. Here we meet I-95, which is signed for Florence and Savannah, and we get an exit sign for Bowman and Harleyville. We're heading toward Harleyville, by the way. Here we meet US-15, which will take you to Somerton, St. George, and I-26, and we are still signed for Harleyville, but honestly I think it should be Charleston. And we're going to skip Harleyville in this direction and end at US-78, which is our parent route, and it can take you to Charleston, Goose Creek, and all that. Now let's go the other way. Starting back up, going westbound off of US-78, we get signed for Beadlow Forest, which is just a landmark, so we don't have to acknowledge that. And Harleyville, and I don't like Harleyville, that should be Orangeburg. Orangeburg, because, well, Orangeburg's major, obviously, and Harleyville's unincorporated, and it's just, it has nothing, really. And US-78 signed for St. George. And here we get one liner for Harleyville, of course, because why wouldn't we? Orangeburg should be here. How many times do I have to say it? Orangeburg, please. Here we meet South Carolina 453 in Harleyville, and it is signed for Harleyville while we get signed for Rosenville. Orangeburg! Here in Rosenville, we only meet US-15, that's it. We'll be heading toward I-95 while it is heading toward I-26. And US-15 signed for St. George and Somerton while we're signed for Bowman. Here, I'm fine with Orangeburg being taken away, but Orangeburg should be signed for the right because of I-26, because I don't think anyone would be heading to I-26 from Harleyville because it's all just like low speed limit streets and all that. US-15 most likely has a higher speed limit because it's a highway, and yeah, it just makes sense, alright. Here we meet I-95, which will take you to Savannah and Florence. Here we meet South Carolina 210, which will take you to Branchville and Vance, while we are now signed for Orangeburg. Here we meet US-21, their business route in Orangeburg, and we get assigned for Columbia, which is fine with me, and we'll be concurrent with US-21. Here we meet US-301, and as you can see, it is signed for Santee only, and we're also concurrent with US-601 truck, I forgot to say that, and we are signed for North and Columbia, which is really good. Here we meet US-601, and it is signed for St. Matthews and Columbia, and we also meet US-21 business. As US-21 splits from us, it gets signed for Columbia again, so interesting. And we are signed for Block still. We meet US-321, which is signed for Mises and Swansea, while we were signed for Pelion. I don't really agree with Pelion. I think it should be something else like Batesburg, but at the same time, that feels far. Maybe it could be Columbia. No, not Columbia. I don't know. Well, moving on. Just ignore this part right now. We meet South Carolina 394, which is signed for Aiken, and for us, we're actually signed for Batesburg now, and I like that. I'm not complaining. We meet South Carolina 3, and it is signed for Barnwell and Swansea, while we're still signed for Batesburg. Then we get a reassurance shield along with a mileage signed for Pelion and Batesburg, which is good for me. Here we meet South Carolina 302, and it is signed for Wagoner and Columbia, while we're still signed for Batesburg. And we get a weird mileage signed for Batesburg and Leesville. Why is the title like that? It's not like two separate towns. It's a united town. That's what I like to call them. Like McRae Hill, and then I call it a united town. Here we meet South Carolina 113, which will take you to Wagoner. Here we meet I-20, and it is signed for Augusta and Columbia. Here we meet South Carolina 391, and we have a picture here by Lawson, New York, so I thank him for that a lot. Appreciate it. Here we meet US-1, and it is signed for Columbia and Aiken. Here we split from South Carolina 391 as it heads to Newberry, and we join South Carolina 23 as we get signed for Saluda. In the other direction, South Carolina 23 is signed for Columbia. And we have a personal picture here by Lawson, New York, and by me. And this is one of my favorite signs. It just looks cool. And once again, thank you, Lawson, New York. More of those to come. Here we leave South Carolina 23 as it heads to Rich Greens and Edgefield. Then we get yet another picture from Lawson, New York, showing the reassurance shield for westbound US-178. Here's we join South Carolina 39. I have a personal picture of us getting signed for Saluda and Greenwood, so this is good. Here we join the Mega 121, aka South Carolina 121, and we have a personal picture by Lawson, New York again, and two personal pictures by me. So yeah. Oh yeah, did I say that we're also signed for Newberry now? Here we meet US-378, which goes to McCormick and Lexington, and Lawson, New York has a junction picture sign of this, while I have the westbound sign for US-378 here. Here we split from South Carolina 121 and get signed for Greenwood, as our invisible connector route to the right here gets signed for Columbia because of US-378, and 121 will keep going on to Newberry. Here South Carolina 39 splits from us. Here we meet South Carolina 246, which is signed for 96, and we are down for Greenwood still. Sorry, the picture's a little blurry. Here we meet South Carolina 248 and the Discovery route. We're actually concurrent with it, a little bit, since Epworth Camp Road, or Camp Epworth Road, something like that. And anyways, this route is signed for 96 in the Lake Greenwood State Park. Here we begin a concurrency of US 25 as we enter the Greenwood area. Here we meet South Carolina 67, and it goes to Callison. Here we meet South Carolina 225, which is signed for McCormick and Abbeville, and South Carolina 72's favor and US 221's favor, and it bypasses the area to the south. Here we meet our business routes, and US 221 becomes concurrent with it. And we have a sign for the Parksea Gardens, which is unnecessary to be honest, but I guess it's just some point of interest. And next we get a mileage sign for Lawrence, Anderson, and Greenville, which is really good. Here we meet South Carolina 34 via interchange, and it is signed for 96 in Greenwood. Oh yeah, by the way, on the way through Greenwood, bypassing it and stuff, we pass by this street sign. So we're referred to as bypassing A2. This is what the locals call this apparently. But South Carolina 72 isn't concurrent with us yet, which is the ironic part. So why not call it bypass 25 for right now or something? Did we just... I was going to call this an air shield, but no, I would say it's an air street sign. Here, US 221 splits from us to go to Lawrence and Clinton, while we meet South Carolina 72 proper and South Carolina 72 business. South Carolina 72 will be concurrent with us. Here at a random side road, I got a picture of the view of Greenwood and a junction sign for US 25, US 178, South Carolina 72. This was taken after I visited a store, so yeah. Very cool view though. It looks way better at night, and also I couldn't get the full view because, yeah. Higher up the hill though, it looks so much better. Here we meet South Carolina 254, which goes to Cokesbury, And we also get a mileage sign for Abbeville, Anderson, and Greenville, which is good. As we meet up with our business routes again, we split from South Carolina 72. Here we split from US 25 to join South Carolina 185 super briefly, and we get signed for Hodges, Anderson, Due West, and Erskine College. Here we split from South Carolina 185 and get signed for Anderson as we get signed for Erskine College. Honestly, just give Erskine College its own brown sign and sign South Carolina 185 for Due West primarily. Like a little brown section or something can be added to the Control City sign. Something like that. I would edit it into the same, but I'm too lazy to do it right now. And then we get this monstrosity as we get a reassurance shield. Donald's. It's like the Lyman to my Todd. Why is Honeypath or Anderson not present here? Donald should not be alone. It is not that major of a town. Only South Carolina 184 is there. This is almost worse than Switzerland and Verdery, dude. Like, why? Why? As we enter Hodges town limits, we meet the other end of South Carolina 246, and we get 2 mileage signs. One for Honeypath and Anderson, and then another for Abbeville and Honeypath. How about Abbeville, Honeypath, and Anderson? That'd be a lot better. And this is basically a straight arrow mileage sign, except for that straight arrows for the US-178. But, okay. And then, I don't know, it's just inconsistent here. I don't like it. Here we meet a little side road that connects South Carolina 185 to us, and it's signed for Abbeville only. And that's fine with me. Wait. We're in favor of this road, right? I hope not. Hopefully it's just for South Carolina 184. I don't know. But yeah. And also this is just signed because South Carolina 185 is literally right beside us in Hodges, so yeah. And here we pass by one of my favorite areas of 178. Pretty beautiful through here, you know, nice fields. And then we meet South Carolina 420 just before we enter Abbeville County, and it is time for Ware Shoals. And we are currently in Shoals Junction, which is like a historical railroad area or something like that. But yeah, I like this sign though. It's from like the sign being stolen and stuff, like I said earlier, but yeah. We enter a town at Donald's and meet South Carolina 184, and holy cow, there's a lot going on here. So from this side we can see Anderson for us, and then for 184 going to the left here, it is time for Due West, Erskine College, and Abbeville. Seriously, what's with Erskine College being in Control City? And then from 184 we see that the other direction of us is signed for Hodges and Greenwood, of course. And then the way we're going is signed for Honeypath, Anderson, and Greenville, which I think is insane and really good. Greenville's favoring US-76. And it's a little interesting though, because back in Greenwood we had a sign for Greenville already, so I don't know. I guess it's for 184 traffic. But yeah, this is cool. And then at the other end of the 184 concurrence, we just get Ware Shoals, because it ends at South Carolina 252, just north of it. And I can't forget to mention that we're not concurrent with the Discovery route again. Here we enter Honeypath and join US-76 in South Carolina 252. For some reason the junction sign says 252, no US-76 mentioned, so it's kind of lame. But we do get signed for Belton and Anderson, which I do like. Here we get assigned on the left side of the road, interestingly enough. And we get signed for Belton as South Carolina 252 gets signed for Anderson, because it is a quicker way to get there. Here we enter Belton and we join South Carolina 20 very briefly, and we all get signed for Anderson together. The other way of South Carolina 20 will take you to South Carolina 247 and Williamston. And here's where South Carolina 20 will split from us and head to places like Abbeville and Due West. Next to me, South Carolina 415 will take you to places like Iowa and South Carolina 252. Here we meet a road that will take you to South Carolina 252. And this will be the only access road since up ahead. It only merges into us in one direction and we can't access it in that little area, so yeah. And here's where South Carolina 252 physically merges into US-76 and 178 and ends. Here at this light we begin concurrency of US-29, and we're not acknowledged here for some reason. All we have is a US-76 truck sign, and that's still mainline 76. It's just the preferred truck route, I guess. I don't know. Anderson side stuff weird here. And we can see that US-29 northbound sign for Anderson University in the SC Department of Motor Vehicles, so lame. And there's no like arrow indicating the concurrency, which is even worse. Then US-29 will split from us here, and then we will make a slightly left turn at this intersection. Here at this very beautiful picture from Street View here, we join US-29 Business, which is not labeled, South Carolina 81 and South Carolina 28. Here we meet South Carolina 24, which goes to the airport. And now South Carolina 28, South Carolina 81, and US-29 Business will leave us here, and they are signed for northbound I-85 while we are signed for southbound I-85. Oh, and also the 3 routes are signed for Anderson University and a museum and a hospital. And then we join South Carolina 28 again, but I also have another picture for this, and this one's a personal picture, so hold on. I actually managed to get a close-up of the sign here, showing that we become concurrent South Carolina 28 at the other end of the intersection. So I thought this would be a pretty cool show. Then here, by where we had that 2 South Carolina 81 sign on the other direction, we get this reassurance shield of square South Carolina 28 shields. Yeah, this is a really weird thing to see though. It just looks cursed. Here we will split from US-76 and South Carolina 28, and we will be heading toward Liberty now. Then here at this light, we get signed for I-85, and we get a sign as well for Liberty and Pickens. And we can see that was still considered a truck route for some reason, which I don't know why, it doesn't make sense. And this road also takes you to the other South Carolina 28, where both South Carolina 28s meet really. I don't know, it doesn't make sense though, to be honest. Here we meet I-85, which is signed for Atlanta and Greenville. Here we meet US-123, which is signed for Clemson and Greenville. Here we meet South Carolina 93 and Liberty. Here we meet South Carolina 183 shortly after we enter Pickens. Here we meet South Carolina 288 and South Carolina 11. At 288 we get signed for Table Rock from Rosman. I don't like Table Rock, that should be its home ground sign. 288's Control City is fine, and Rosman for us is fine. And then at South Carolina 11 we can see Table Rock's taken away from us, and we can see it's signed for Salem as well and Keowee-Totsaway. I have no idea what Keowee-Totsaway is, to be honest, but continuing on. Here we get a nice view of the mountains. And here we enter North Carolina and get signed as northbound US-178 now instead of westbound. And now we pass the Eastern Continental Divide at an elevation of 2,694 feet. And as of the latest Street View, which was like in 2025, June 2025, the sun's not there, but I had to go back to July 2022 Street View just to see it, so yeah. I don't know if it's there right now. And here we pass over the French Broad River as we enter Rosman. I would definitely fish here. This looks very nice and peaceful. Here we make a left turn at this traffic light here. And like I said, we're signed as northbound US-178. And we will turn onto Old Rosman Road and get signed for Cashiers. And then the other direction of Old Rosman Road is going to be signed for Brevard. And here's another nice little viewpoint here as we head through Rosman. And then finally, we end our journey here at US 64, aka the Rosman Highway, and it is signed for Brevard and Cashiers. Alright chat, I hope you enjoyed this awesome video of US 178, although it was pretty inconsistent in one direction, alright in the other. It was kind of like the opposite twin of US 378, but it was a fun route to do in Reboot, and all I can say is I missed a lot of stuff in that route, because, I mean, to be fair though, I was still like pretty new to YouTube and all that, you know. But yeah, I'm trying out some new stuff on the channel as well, like new thumbnail designs and all that. Let me know how they look, and I'll probably ask that in the community pages and stuff. But yeah, I'm still gonna say it here because why not? And anyways, I'll see y'all next time, and have a great one. Oh, and actually, one more thing. Let me know what y'all think of the highway series, and if you have any like suggestions of what areas I should do and what highways I can modify, or what highways I could add, let me know, and I can include that in the series and make that a new like part or something, and I'll give you a shout out. So yeah, just let me know in a community post like with my schedule and all that, or on the YouTube video that I made, and I'll hit you up. Just make sure it's not an old YouTube video because I'll probably not look at it. Anyways, I'll see y'all, and for real this time, have a good one.